Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We're a really small audience today from what I see, so if anyone else wants to join, otherwise it's a small enough group that I can buy all of you cocktails later without going broke. So that'll be nice. So thanks for joining. Today's talk is going to be about the new Datorama Marketplace, and what we're doing with it is enabling developers to build apps on top of Datorama. My name is Gur. I lead the applications team in Israel in the Datorama engineering department. You can find me online pretty much everywhere with the same username. Been with the company for 3 years and enjoying every minute of it. I must warn you at first that Salesforce is a publicly traded company. Please base all your decisions on products that are currently available for everyone. Okay, so I'll start with a quick background about Datorama for those folks who don't know. Last year we were acquired by Salesforce. We were really happy to join the Ohana. It's been an amazing experience. I can say that for me personally, this has been a very humbling and educating experience. Going from a tiny little startup in Tel Aviv into this huge enterprise software corporation is a great experience. But mostly it's been a great validation for our product and our market. So the way we see ourselves fit in the Salesforce Marketing Cloud is the Marketing Cloud gives all these different tools for marketers to engage with audiences across different channels. So SMS, mobile, email, social, and the open web. But then the missing piece which Datorama complements is that if you want to report on all those different channels in a consolidated manner where you can see all of your marketing performance in a single view, in a single system of record, that's exactly what Datorama knows how to do best. So we connect the data from all the different sources, and they then visualize it with our AI-powered insights and give you a lot of power to take action and to drive customer success. So from our perspective, as Datorama, if you look at the challenge that we're solving, it's essentially that the marketing world is hyperly fragmented. Okay, there are tons of different data sources. If you talk to a modern marketer these days, you go to a media agency and you talk to an analyst, the conversation is probably going to be something like, what kind of things do you do on a daily basis? And they're going to say, yeah, well, I run campaigns on Facebook and Google Ads and Twitter and Snapchat and Instagram and LinkedIn and Pinterest and probably dozens of others that I haven't mentioned. And then you'll ask them, okay, how do you manage to do reporting based on all that, right? That's pretty complicated, and you've got that running on different brands, different geographies, different ad sets. So what they're probably going to tell you is, well, the data is siloed in different platforms. I can figure out what each one has on its own, but that's also a pretty complex task by itself. But if I want to see the whole thing together, I can't. And then you ask them, okay, then how do you know if your marketing is worth it? Are you returning the investment? And that's when they're probably going to start to stutter, unless they're using a tool like Datorama. So Datorama delivers these 4 pillars. First of all, we connect and unify all of your data sources into a single place, creating what we call a single source of truth. And then we use our AI-powered dashboards to visualize all the data that you have. And then we offer different types of visualizations. You can customize it to accommodate for the CMO level and then granularly all the way down to the marketing analyst. We automate the reporting aspect of it so that when you need to send out reports to your clients or internally in your brand or your organization, then we got you covered on scaling that out. And then finally, you can take action from within the platform back to the marketing platforms where you pull the data from to orchestrate different actions. So for example, if you realize that you have a campaign on Facebook ads that's underperforming, you can pause that campaign directly from inside Datorama. Or on the flip side, if it's performing well, you can increase the budget. Quick technical overview of Datorama. So this is a simplified architecture diagram. I'm going to go counterclockwise from the top. So on the top, we have our web servers. This is essentially what's customer-facing that serves the UI and the different API requests. On the left-hand side, we have all our different data stores, starting from our online database, which is Postgres. That's where we store all the metadata. And then we have all the aggregated customer data inside our warehouse, partitioned by different technologies and shards. On the bottom, we have the raw data that's stored in S3 or in blob storage on Azure. On the bottom, we have our in-house batch processing stack. And this is essentially, together with the Kubernetes cluster, what pulls in all the data from outside, from the different data sources, and does all the ETL, loads it into our data warehouse. And then At the top right, we have our different mechanisms for orchestrating distributed workload. So Redis for caching, RabbitMQ for the queues, and then we also use both of these components for things like locking, semaphores, and sort of fair queues and stuff like that. And another thing that's worth mentioning is that this is what Salesforce calls a multi-substrate architecture, because essentially this stack is deployed both on Amazon Web Services and on Microsoft Azure, and it's working in conjunction with each other. So we have a fine stack, we have a great architecture, but the problem was, till this year, that essentially Datorama itself was closed for development. It was very, very difficult to develop anything as an engineer on top of the platform. So my team was tasked with opening the platform for developers, and come 2019, we've just recently, last week, announced the Marketplace. Now, the Marketplace, which was launched last week, will be generally available at the end of June, is essentially what you guys all know of as an app store. So very similar to the AppExchange, to a mobile app store, letting developers run their code inside Datorama, leveraging the Datorama platform's capabilities. I'll show you a quick demo of the first app that we built. So this is a Salesforce lead generation app, connecting Datorama with Salesforce data. Essentially, what you're doing here is going through the install phase, defining your lead funnel and the different steps, classifying the opportunities as your organization sees them within Salesforce, and then you hit done. The platform pulls in the data from Salesforce and creates a very nice looking visualization of your entire lead pipeline and funnel. So what you can see now is how a lead is created, converted into a contact, an opportunity, and finally a closed deal. And broken down by the different marketing sources. Also, we have a cohort analysis chart here showing how much time takes for each cohort to convert. And essentially, if some of you guys are using Salesforce CRM, then you should know that creating this kind of reporting inside Salesforce is a very non-trivial task. But with Datorama, you can do it with no code, just clicks, in just a few seconds. Back to the Marketplace. The vision is we want to save you all the hassle. Usually, Datorama comes with a rather steep learning curve, and you need to probably learn how to set up your data streams and your workflows, defining your measurements and dimensions. There's a lot of stuff that you need to set up yourself or have professional services do it for you. And we're saying, no, forget all that stuff. All you need to do is click on the app, just like in an app store, go through a minimal set of installation steps, and you're done. We're going to create and provision all the setup in your Datorama account for you. The motivation for developing apps is twofold. First, for your users. So you want to solve difficult marketing use cases that, once again, could be solved with plain Datorama, but with an app, it gets automated and quickly solved. And then you can connect data from multiple sources. So for example, if you're an external marketing vendor and you want to build an app in Datorama, you're going to leverage our data connectivity capabilities to connect your data with some other source, say Google Analytics or Facebook ads or whatever you want. And so we're just saying, don't reinvent data integration. We've already solved that problem for you. For your business, on the other hand, you're going to package all your expertise and your marketing know-how into an app. You're going to monetize it with our platform, and you're going to get the extra bonus of exposure from the Salesforce AppExchange. So essentially, each app in Datorama Marketplace has a dual listing. It's going to be listed both in the AppExchange and in the Datorama Marketplace. All right, cool. So the first ones who are developing apps are, actually, we are. The team is here, my homies, all right? And we're going to build the initial critical mass for the Marketplace, but then our partners are already starting to build their own apps, so to connect their external data from other sources inside Datorama. And finally, we're going to let pretty much anyone develop apps. So if you're a media agency and you want to build an app for your clients, or an independent software vendor, or two guys in the garage, indie developers, anyone can do it. Quick call out. We've just opened an app idea contest with significant cash prizes, so I encourage you to head over to info.datorama.com/app-contest, submit your ideas. You might be eligible for a prize. Here's another example of the first success story or significant success story we've had with the apps. The first point-to-point integration between Datorama and the Marketing Cloud has been achieved with an app, which essentially packages a connector that pulls email studio data into Datorama and then visualizes on top of that data things that are once again, very hard to visualize in email studio, because over there you can just get raw data exported into CSV. But here we're giving you the added value of seeing it in a nice looking UI and then drilling down into your sends and deliveries and your clicks, subscribe, unsubscribes, pretty much all the KPIs that you want to examine and deep drill into. All right, so we're all a technical bunch, right? So let's talk shop a bit. An app is essentially, at its core, a piece of HTML, CSS, JavaScript that you as a developer build, submit it to us. We're going to host it for you. We're going to run it inside our iframe. And your code can do pretty much whatever it wants. You can interact with the Datorama server API. You can interact with your own API, use third-party APIs. Pretty much very, very flexible. The tech stack is also very flexible. So the only thing that we require you to do is to drop in our JavaScript SDK and then use our REST API to entities inside Datorama. Other than that, you can use whatever client-side you guys, whatever client-side. So Angular, React, or JavaScript, that's also fine. So if you want to get started with developing apps, this is the first thing you're going to do. You're going to plug in this script into your HTML code. This essentially downloads the SDK, initializes it, and then you have the onload callback, which would be at pretty much the root level of your application. This is where you bootstrap your client-side application. And you get a lot of data from Datorama injected into that in the data variable. So that was pretty old school syntax, but most of us folks like to work with ES6 nowadays. So you can also just npm install the SDK, and then same initialization and onload code. Cool. When you're building an app, we require you to support 3 different run modes. So the first one is the demo mode. This is for when the user is browsing through the marketplace and they want to just take a sneak peek of the app before actually committing to installing it, which is by itself a pretty easy process, but you just want to take a look. So demo mode would usually be only UI, no API calls, everything would be mock data. Then you would develop your install mode, which is essentially another HTML page or another route in your same page, which is sort of like the capture phase, where you want to collect the minimum set of input you need from the user in order to create the underlying setup in Datorama. And then finally, you have the run mode, in which you will build your specific marketing use case UI for surfacing the data and the insights that are relevant for the app that you're building. If you want to make some API calls to the server, so there are pretty much 2 ways to do it. It's very, very simple. Once you import the SDK, you can use the expressive syntax of going through, for example, data streams. And you can just say da.datastreams.process and say, I want to process these IDs of data streams for this start and end date. And on the other hand, if you know the endpoint you're calling on the server, you can just use plain HTTP methods. So we expose all of them, the get, put, post, patch, delete. And then you need to know which route you're calling, but that's documented quite thoroughly in our dev portal, which I'll get to in a few minutes. Then as a final step, assuming that you've walked your users through the installation phase and you want to commit the installation, you're going to call this API, the install method. Now, the nice thing here is that we give you this config object that you see here, which is completely flexible. You can save whatever custom payload you want here, any key value, any form of JSON, if it's flat or deeply nested, whatever you want. All this metadata will be saved to our Datorama backend. And once you run the app, it'll be injected back into the run mode so that you consume this metadata that you accumulated during the installation phase. Now, this kind of flexibility comes at a cost, which is obviously we have to make sure that the platform and developing apps is super secure. This is at top of our mind. So on the client side, we're going to go inside out in terms of security layers. Once you've submitted an app, it's been reviewed and approved by our team. We run it in a sandboxed iframe. We run the iframe on a separate top-level domain. And then we also have a process called the JavaScript handshake, which essentially makes sure that your app is currently whitelisted in the session. It's the only app that can be run at the current time. And that ensures maximum security on the client side. On the server, we're going to go outside in. Once you perform an API call to Datorama, it's going to hit our web application firewall. So we're preventing DDoS attacks by that. Then it's going to go down to our cross-origin filter, making sure that only calls originating from the Datorama platform are coming in. So you cannot host the app elsewhere and make malicious calls. Then we're going to go through the rate limiting service, which essentially is going to make sure you're not blasting too many calls at once to the server. App authentication. This is the most important layer probably, which makes sure that the API call is authenticated both as the currently running app and the current user who's running the app. And then eventually we get to the endpoint layer, which ensures that the action you're trying to invoke on the server side is something that the current user conjoined with the current app are authorized to do. So for example, if a certain app is not authorized to delete account data, obviously, then we're going to block that at that point. Oops. OK, reviewing some of the tools that we give developers to get started. So we have the Dev Playground, which is essentially a live testing sandbox within Datorama. You run your code on your local host, but then you plug it into this iframe, which is the sandbox. When you're running in sandbox mode in the Dev Playground, essentially you're doing everything the app does. You're creating data streams, you're creating dimensions, measurements, you're consuming live data that's been pulled into the platform, but the app itself will not be listed or published to the store. So this is a great way of testing. And then on top of that, we've built what we call the app's design system, essentially a UI component library that is homegrown. And this library packages all the best practices that we've accumulated so far, plus the Datorama style guide. It is highly customizable, and it's going open source soon, and we encourage you to check it out. This is a very easy library to use. Just npm install Datorama app components, and you're done. You just plug in the components. React-based, we're probably going to, at some point, enhance it to support more frameworks. And then we have the query builder. So most likely in your app, you're going to want to pull some of the data that your customers have and present it in a nice chart or something. But you want to know how to construct those queries to the Datorama backend. So this is the tool of choice that you're going to use. Essentially, it's a WYSIWYG editor where you say, for example, I want to visualize all the impressions and clicks broken down by campaigns and dates, descending order, filtered by a certain campaign. And then you just hit the generate query. You're going to get that little JSON blurb over there, plug it into your code, and you're ready to go. And that's it. And so this essentially fetches the data from Datorama, and you can then visualize it. All right, cool. But what if we're not front-end developers, right? We just want to make a server call. We want to write a Python script. We want to do something without a UI, OK? So don't have a cow, Mark. We got you covered. We've recently launched our developer portal. But first, a quick anecdote before that. How many of you guys ever had to work with an API that's not documented? Cool. So what do? Open the network tab, right? Start examining the request, looking at the payload, the headers, and all that stuff. Sadly, this was the case for us for many years, where our clients had to do this in order to reverse engineer the API. And this caused a whole lot of problems, obviously, because we would break the APIs without them knowing. They would blast too many calls, right? They would go crazy with calling a single endpoint as much as they want. I see you're smiling because you've had that pain as well. OK. And so we decided to organize all this, put an end to it. So come 2018, we've launched the developer portal, which is your one-stop shop nowadays for all the documentation you need for Datorama APIs. So query API, platform API, JavaScript SDK, tutorials on building apps, everything you need is here. So another deeper look into the developer portal. We've actually documented around, I think, 120 endpoints. And this essentially creates a situation where everything you can do from within the platform and the UI, you can automate with API calls and with a script. And so it's very extensive. You have request and response examples for everything. You have an interactive console inside the dev portal, which is kind of like a postman tool where you can actually trigger the calls and check that they're working. And some of the things that we're seeing customers already do with our developer API is, so the first and most common use case is where, for example, a media agency has a master workspace, and they want to replicate that to all their different customers, have the same workspace essentially. And then they decide that they changed something in that original master workspace, so they want to push the changes everywhere. So they're going to do that with the API. I'm actually running a bit short on time, I see, so I'm going to skip a few of these cases. Beg your pardon. But definitely hang out around here for later if you guys want to ask. Wrapping things up, what we're trying to build right now is all the infrastructure and the tools, and given the marketplace, the developer resources, the SDK, we're already seeing a lot of our customers and partners building a brand new generation of products on top of Datorama. The top left one, the use case apps, was the one I focused on today, but there's a whole selection of other products, such as custom widgets and actions and themes that are being built. And we're very happy about this. We're hoping that this ecosystem is going to proliferate and grow as time goes on. Quick call out, we have another couple of sessions that will show a deeper drill down in building apps and using the Datorama platform. Please join us tomorrow at 10:30 and 11 at the Marketing Cloud Mini Theater. And we've recently announced our certification for Marketing Cloud developers. Encourage you to check that out as well. And that's it. May the source be with you. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'm here after.